Today, lads, we're going to talk a little bit about the fourth quarter, and we're going to be talking a little bit about how the Atlanta Dream, in my opinion, just had no answer for Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever in that fourth quarter. And realistically, for quite a bit of the second half, they had no answer for an.
The coaching staff of the Atlanta Dreams was utterly taken aback since they had no response on behalf of Caitlin Clark. They are not the first, to be honest. Coaches frequently enter with assurance and go perplexed by how overwhelming Clark's true leadership is. By the time the Fever secured their decisive victory of 99-82, it was evident from the body language of the Dream sidelines. No strategy, no modifications, and no idea how to prevent the takeover by Caitlin Clark.
Let me say this about the Atlanta Dream. Y'all was hanging in there for 2 quarters, but then y'all ran out of gas. Cause you know why? The Indiana Fever ran y'all out y'all own building, and it was a sight to see. Y'all was huffing and puffing, trying to get some air and find some extra wind, and y'all...
When players mistakenly label her the 9th best point guard, this is precisely what you get. Caitlin Clark doesn't waste time making headlines or responding to comments online. She lets her game do the talking. Ignore the noise. The rankings don't matter. She arrives, settles in, and takes over. Right there on the floor where it counts most, she wins loudly, plainly, and effortlessly while the detractors are chatting.
There's no surprise that the Indiana Fever looked best tonight when the offense was ran through Caitlin Clark. There's no surprise that the offense looked best tonight when we pushed the ball off of a make, pushed the ball off of a miss. There's no surprise that the Indiana Fever looked best tonight when Caitlin Clark was surrounded by players that don't have an ego, surrounded by players that said, I'm going to be MVP of the WNBA this year. You see how easy it is when you just let Caitlin play ball and others follow.
It was more than simply a game versus the Atlanta Dream. A declaration was made. Finally letting go, Caitlin Clark set the tone, ran the offense at her own pace, and branded every possession. She was able to dominate without dropping 30. The true story was revealed by 9 brilliant assists and total floor control, despite only scoring 12 points. She experienced the system for the first time, which led to full mayhem for Atlanta, ultimate control, and a masterclass in leadership and pace.
They made sure Caitlin Clark had the ball in her hands. She became the creator of offense. That's what we've been saying. Her and Aaliyah Boston, I believe it was 4 times, got the Stockton-Malone 2-man game working. Dantas got involved at one point with Caitlin Clark. Caitlin was still off on her shooting tonight.
The most amazing moment was when Stephanie White gave the keys to Caitlin Clark. Forceful, fast-paced, and in charge of the operation according to her wishes. To create an impression, she didn't even have to be completely inebriated at 3 o'clock. When the Dream coach arrived, he believed he was prepared for her. However, he was unprepared for Caitlin Clark to sprint at full speed and burn the entire game while she was entirely unrestrained.
Even when she wasn't exactly getting when it wasn't her putting the ball in the basket or her showing up on the stat sheet, she was burning Jordan Canada. And people don't understand how good Jordan Canada is on defense. She was absolutely burning Jordan Canada. Canada could not stay in front of her. And that is a big thing. That is genuinely a big, big thing. That if you can't stay in front of her, it creates a space for everybody else. And there were some hockey assists. There was good ball movement. There was a lot of things. There was a lot of real positives when it came to Caitlin Clark.
Do you know what makes all of this lovely? The coaching staff of the Atlanta Dream probably spent many hours studying films, preparing defensive plays, and coming up with every possible way to slow down Caitlin Clark. They most likely discussed full court pressure, traps, and making her uncomfortable throughout every possession. However, all of their preparation was wasted as the final buzzer rang, and the scoreboard showed 99-82 in the Fever's favor. Stunned, the coach stood. The same guy, who some mockingly referred to as the 9th greatest point guard in the NBA, had just dismantled his club.
Obviously, tough game. I thought we had a good first half. We were really competitive. Second half we just had so many defensive breakdowns, and give them credit, they were getting extra possessions, and those extra possessions were turning into points just about every single time. So, just valuing ending their possession. It's not enough to force a tough shot. We got to come come down with the ball. And then, we had some defensive breakdowns and they made us pay for. They were able to extend the lead. And then at the end, we had to, do some gambling and do some things that really were not that.
Please subscribe to our channel and give a like if you're having fun. Folks, this isn't a one-time event. WNBA coaches have been perplexed by Caitlin Clark's performance. Do you recall when the rival coaches felt they had her figured out and that her supremacy in college wouldn't extend to the professional ranks? Rather, she is continuously demonstrating that she is not just adapting to the WNBA but also redefining brilliance at this level. That's stunning. How ironic that is. These same coaches, who treat her like a star, completely altered their defensive strategy to keep her in check. She was still regarded as the 9th best guard in the league by Michael Jordan. They celebrate their attempts to remove her, aggressively defend her, and minimize her impact wherever they can. But the same coaches and defenders wind up looking silly when it matters most, in front of the most dazzling lights. Clark keeps becoming better, and her influence is unavoidable.
The Atlanta Dream were able to really neutralize Caitlin Clark in the first half, and I know Caitlin Clark had 5 first-half assists, but they were able to neutralize Caitlin Clark's impact on the game in that first half. And in the second half, regardless of the box score numbers, how Caitlin completely took over. So, the big way they were able to neutralize Caitlin Clark, and I think it was almost an issue with Stephanie White as much as anything, is they...
VS the Atlanta Dream. A very noteworthy event occurred. For the first time, Stephanie White accepted what Iowa supporters had always understood. When Caitlin Clark is given complete control over the tempo and flow of the game, she becomes even more deadly. We saw White try to adapt Clark into a system that wasn't appropriate for her particular set of skills throughout this season. When Clark was forced to stand in the corner while others brought the ball up court, her frustration was evident on her face. But everything changed in this game. White came to the realization that attempting to control Clark's innate tendencies was akin to attempting to contain a hurricane. It is not necessary to put a once-in-a-generation talent on your team in a box. Your whole system is based on her. And that's just what we witnessed. An admission that, given the opportunity to take the lead, Clark's style is unstoppable.
Saw Clark sort of gaining her rhythm as the game went along, sort of returning to her form as the game went along, finding that pep in her step as the game went along, even though the shooting numbers were tour dates again, and she's got to find that shooting stroke at some point. Look, it can't go on all year, but you understand where some of those struggles come from when you deal with a quad injury and then a groin injury, and you're thrust back into the lineup and you're trying to find your way. But I do think it was the way that Clark found her way to the basket that was the difference in this game, really. That was what changed
The ideal coach could only observe as Caitlin Clark played like a maestro, masterfully directing the Fever's offensive strategy. In ways Atlanta couldn't match, she ripped apart the defense by threading impossible passes, coming up with looks out of thin air, and making last-minute adjustments. She maintained complete control even when she wasn't having any problems. Why was it even more remarkable? The way she made everyone around her feel better. Critics casually overlook that portion. Clark improves others in addition to playing well herself. She transformed the entire squad into a masterpiece in defiance of the dream.
That game, it's been an inconsistent ride for Indiana, and for Clark as well, who's had to fight through a lot of injuries. But I think the encouraging thing from Cece was the fight that she showed on the floor. Clearly, she's not quite at 100%, still working her way back, hasn't found her 3-ball yet, but what she did was attack. She used the physicality against the defenders by putting her head down and going to the basket. That opened things up for her playmaking, which of course is another genius aspect of her game. Once that started clicking, the Fever ran away with things. Sophie Cunningham was everywhere. Clark had it going with Aaliyah Boston again. Kelsey Mitchell was cooking. And all of a sudden, you look up and the Fever are lighting up the score.
The whole Fever squad improves when Caitlin Clark plays her style of basketball. Quick, unrestricted, and in complete control. The floor opens, the tempo quickens, and all of a sudden, people start eating. Kelsey Mitchell begins to appear cleaner. There is more space for Aaliyah Boston to paint. Sophie Cunningham was as open as a showbox on the outside. This version of Clark couldn't be restrained, so the dream coach had no response. She doesn't just play well. She rises when she's self-assured, controlling the tempo, and empowered to be the floor general that ignited college basketball at Iowa. At that point, she transcends her status as a star and takes on a more elusive quality. Transcendent.
They were manhandling Caitlin Clark early in that game. Like, they had 2 hands on her. they were fully getting into the we are grabbing her and we don't really care. Like that was their goal. Their goal was they were out there to maul Caitlin Clark. They had they had absolutely no intention of doing anything other.
And let's take a moment to discuss that 9th best point guard crap. It's an amazing cognitive contradiction. These instructors prepare for her for hours on end. They create particular defense plans only to slow her down. They worry about how to lessen her influence, which keeps them up at night. They then go back and vote her as the league's 9th best guard. Their behavior on the court paints an entirely different picture, so it's either extreme envy or total illusion. In actuality, neither players nor coaches are able to protect her. With greater momentum from more games, she will only improve. She is constantly improving her game every time she on the court. She always introduces a new weapon to her armory just when her opponents believe they have figured out how to defeat her. We are seeing the development of a player who was already exceptional into something even more remarkable. Caitlin Clark's collegiate persona was remarkable. However, this is the professional version, the one getting used to double teaming, acclimating to the WNBA's roughness, and building relationships with new colleagues. For the opposition coaches, this version is very frightening.
And this was a really nice all-around game from the Indiana Fever. And some may ask, well, Rhodes, do you feel better about Stephanie White? No, not at all. Because until she proves night in and night out she's willing to put the ball into Caitlin Clark's hand and let her be the creator and innovator on offense, I will not be sold. I will not be sold. The fact is, Caitlin's going to start knocking these shots back down at some point. And all of a sudden, her statistics are going to blow up.
We can infer everything we need to know about Clark's actual standing among the league's best players from the Atlanta Dream coach's silent response. You don't make such a detailed game plan for the 9th greatest thing. Sleep is not lost over the 10th greatest thing. For the 9th best whatever, you don't totally change your defensive strategy. For finally realizing what many of us have been saying all season, that Caitlin Clark is most productive when she's playing her natural game, Stephanie White deserves praise. She is practically unbeatable at the professional level thanks to her fast-paced, up-tempo style, which earned her a star at Iowa. When given the opportunity to create, push the tempo, and not be restricted by strict defensive plans, she transforms into the player that coaches dread having to defend. There was more to Clark's performance versus Atlanta than simply the numbers. Her 9 assists and general floor leadership were outstanding, but what really stood out was how she managed the game's emotional flow. Clark would always make a play that returned the momentum to Indiana whenever Atlanta appeared to gain ground. Whenever it appeared that they would run, Clark would always find a means to stop it.
Instead of trying to put a square peg in a round hole, this was a tale of two halves. A tale of two halves. A half where the Indiana Fever let Jordan Canada have wide open shots, and a half where they decided to play defense and shut Jordan Canada down and not let Ryan Howard get off. Interesting. A half where we had Caitlin off ball and sitting a lot, sitting on the bench, riding away in the first half, and the second half where, oh my God, she's in the game. Oh my God, they're giving her...
Prominent point guards do this. They do more than just accumulate assists and score points. The game's pulse is under their control. They choose when to accelerate, decelerate, assume personal responsibility, and include their colleagues. Against Atlanta, Clark exhibited each of these traits, leaving the ideal coach speechless. For rival coaches, the most annoying aspect is that Clark's influence goes much beyond the box score. Her appearance in the court modifies the requirements for defenses. Because she will find the open player, teams are unable to assist with their assignments. She will blast them from three-point range, so they can't sag back in a zone. She will use her stature and vision to find teammates for easy baskets, so they can't press her full court.
And it's just, all right, I'm going to accept that contact, I'm going to go through it, and I'm going to score on you. And one. Put the points on the board. You know, Caitlin Clark doing it there. Here's a closer look at that play to sort of give you, an idea of what took place, and the she accepts the contact, gives some back herself, and ultimately gets the bucket. By the way, some size on that dream team, obviously. with Griner inside, and Jones got in foul trouble, which helped.
This multifaceted effect is what distinguishes very exceptional players from mediocre ones. Clark will beat you as the game requires, not just in one manner. She will look for her teammates if you take away her ability to shoot 3 points. She will assault the rim if her passing paths are blocked. She will always make the proper read if you send assistance defenders. This was a lesson the Atlanta Dream coach had to learn the hard way. His side had a strong defensive strategy going into the match, but by the end of the evening, a player who was reportedly ranked 9th among her peers had completely outperformed them. The final score of 9,982 doesn't even fully convey how thoroughly the Fever dominated that match once Clark was given carte blanche. The fact that Clark completed all of this while still coping with the after effects of her recent injury worries just serves to highlight how amazing this is. Even though she has been treating a number of illnesses this season, she still performs at a high level. While less skilled athletes may use injuries as a justification for subpar play, Clark has embraced them as inspiration to come up with fresh strategies for victory.
And give them credit, they were getting extra possessions, and those extra possessions were turning into points just about every single time. So, just valuing ending their possession. It's not enough to force a tough shot. We got to come down with the ball. And then, we had some defensive breakdowns and they made us pay for. They were able to extend the lead, and then at the end we had to, do some gambling and do some things that really were not that equipped to do, and they made us pay for that as well, and that kind of made the game a little more lopsided.
There is no clearer message for the rest of the WNBA. Caitlin Clark is thriving rather than merely getting by. She's struggling to fit in with the league. It's being redefined by her. And get ready to be humbled if the coaches are still using old scouting reports and still consider her to be the 9th best of anything. Ask the coach of the Atlanta Dream, who stood silently by as Clark ruined his game plan and put his squad in a state of confusion. Clark is more than simply the league's top point guard. She is the game changer, the tempo setter, and the motor. She cannot be scheduled by coaches. She cannot be slowed down by players. The worst part is that she's only just beginning. She improves her confidence, rhythm, and control with each game and possession. You can't coach against that momentum. Though that wasn't the last time, the Dream Crew had to learn it the hard way. Nobody in the WNBA is able to address the issue of Caitlin Clark. Not quite yet. And they will continue to conclude games in the same manner until they do, stunned, unable to speak, and totally outmatched. If you liked it, please subscribe and leave a like.